So as you guys know, Disney is still my number one largest stock, and given that we're now in 2019 and that they just reported their December quarter results, I thought it'd be a great time to give an update on the stock, do a full analysis, and let you guys know what my future plans on for the stock. So we're going to talk about all of that and more in today's video. Let's get started. What's up everybody, my name is Ala and welcome to my world of stocks. As always, make sure you hit the like button if you enjoy my stock analysis videos and you want to see more in the future. But let's go ahead and start by taking a look at Disney's business. Now I can't fit every little detail in a short YouTube video, so feel free to add anything that I don't cover in the comment section below. But Disney is a pretty well diversified company. Now they own massive resorts and theme parks like Disneyland in California and Disney World in Florida, as well as Disneylands in Tokyo, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Paris. And along with adding new Star Wars attractions, they've also been raising ticket prices, which by the way, the most expensive annual pass for Disneyland in California is now almost $2,000, which is pretty damn expensive. Although to be fair, they do have a cheaper plan at around $400. In any case, they also have Disney's Animal Kingdom, which is like their safari version of a zoo down in Florida, and a number of first-class hotels and resorts all over the world, like the ones in the Caribbean and Hawaii, and they even have their own Disney-branded cruise line, which looks like a lot of fun. On top of that, they own some of the biggest and most popular brands in the world, like Star Wars, Marvel, all the Disney Kids stuff like Mickey Mouse, Frozen, all the Pixar brands. They also own ESPN and ABC, and with their newest acquisition of 21st Century Fox assets, they also gain control of IPs like X-Men, Deadpool, The Simpsons, Avatar, Family Guy, and the list just goes on and on. Speaking of which, the acquisition bolsters their already impressive lineup of content that they can add to their new Disney branded streaming service that will compete in a growingly competitive direct-to-consumer market that includes the likes of Netflix, Amazon, AT&T, which by the way, AT&T will have a newer service thanks to their Time Warner acquisition, and then eventually we should also see Apple enter the market as well. Now to be fair, there are some major criticisms for Disney's future plans in this area. At first it was looking like Disney would have an all-in-one inclusive platform that would just contain an enormous amount of content that would probably destroy anything like Netflix out there, when you consider that most of the watch time on Netflix is licensed content that Netflix doesn't even own themselves. Whereas Disney, on the other hand, would have an enormous amount of content because of their already owned brands and IPs, what they're acquiring from Fox, and they could use those or build off of those, make new original shows and movies. You know, the possibilities are kind of endless. But it's now looking like Disney will actually separate their content into 3 different streaming services, and so people are worried that this might fragment their audience and leave their different platforms with perhaps not enough content to compete with some of the big dogs out there like the Netflixes and Amazons and things like that. But having said that, one of these 3 services is their ESPN Plus platform, and because it's all about sports, I don't necessarily see a problem with it being separate from the other 2. And speaking of ESPN Plus, it's already performing very well as it only launched back in April of last year and became one of the fastest growing streaming services out there as it reached over 1 million subscribers by September and already passed 2 million subscribers in less than a year, as Disney CEO Bob Iger announced in their latest earnings call. And given the very low price point of just $4.99 a month, I could see this service doing very well in the long term as more people cut the cable cord but still want access to sports content. However, the worries for me come in the form of the other 2 services, those being Hulu, which Disney will now control a majority stake in thanks to the acquisition of Fox, and then Disney Plus, which is their new Disney branded platform. Now Hulu is more of an all-in-one platform that mostly offers TV content but also offers a selection of movies as well. And despite most people laughing at the idea of Hulu being any kind of threat in the market, they are actually growing at a very decent rate. Now I believe Hulu started streaming back in 2008, but here's a chart from around 2011, which is the furthest farthest back I could find data for, and you can clearly see that Hulu has been adding subscribers at a very stable rate every year, reaching around 17 million in 2017, and it was just reported last month that Hulu has now reached a whopping 25 million subscribers in 2018, which is up by over 8 million from the year prior, representing a year-over-year increase of pretty close to 50%, which is very impressive when you consider how long the platform has already been out. You're talking about a platform that launched way back in 2008 and still grew last year by almost 50%. That is very impressive. But when looking at Disney Plus, that's their newest streaming service that is set to launch later this year. Now, the tricky thing about Disney Plus is that they want it to be more family friendly with more Disney branded content, and so far it's looking like this will include content from their Disney Studios, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and also National Geographic, which they are acquiring from Fox. Speaking of which, I suppose it's possible that any family-friendly content from Fox can certainly be implemented into Disney Plus down the line, but as of right now, it's looking like all mature-rated content will be placed onto Hulu, and unfortunately, Disney Plus will not contain any R-rated content, which I find very disappointing, especially since that makes it much less likely to get any of those Netflix Marvel shows like Daredevil or The Punisher that contain some pretty graphic content. But I'm hoping that Disney will reconsider this decision and just implement a parental lock feature down the road, but that remains to be seen. On the bright side, we do know that Disney is taking the new platform very seriously, as they're planning to release a number of new original movies and TV shows on the platform with budgets ranging from $25 to $100 million, with one of their Star Wars shows called The Mandalorian expected to cost as much as $100 million, which is one of the highest budgets for a TV show in history, and will be the first ever live-action Star Wars TV show, which is also a very big deal and should see very high ratings and popularity as a result. Adding to that, we'll also get big-name shows from Marvel, including a series based on The Vision and Scarlet Witch, another based on The Falcon and Winter Soldier, and a third based on Loki. There will also be a second Star Wars live-action show based on the Rogue One movie, a Star Wars cartoon, and a number of other Disney shows and movies. Not to mention that most new Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars movies that are not already contractually licensed to someone else will also be made available on the platform, with Captain Marvel being the first new Marvel movie to be exclusively available on Disney Plus after its theatrical release. But like I said before, this still leaves their content fragmented across 3 different platforms, and here's just a short excerpt from what Bob Iger had to say on the matter in their most recent earnings call, saying, "What we said when we decided to launch ESPN Plus and Disney Plus is that rather than creating one gigantic fat bundle of sports, general entertainment programming, and family programming, we thought we'd serve the consumer better by segregating all 3. Ultimately, our goal would be to use the same tech platform to make it easier for people to sign up for all 3 should they want to, same credit card, same username, same password, etc., but give the consumer the kind of choice that we think consumers are going to demand more and more in today's world. If they want to buy all 3, we'd give them that opportunity, potentially at a discount, or 2 for that matter. But if they wanted to buy one of them, we believe they should be able to. So someone who wants sports should be able to buy just sports, and so on." So from here, I'm left with a few different thoughts. Now, on one hand, I don't need all the sports content and every single TV show out there, but the fact that the platform is going to be more family oriented leaves me a little bit worried that, we're probably not going to get any kind of graphically violent shows from Star Wars or Marvel, which would have been really cool. But on the other hand, ESPN Plus seems to be doing very well. Hulu is growing at a pretty nice rate. And the fact that Bob Iger said that we could potentially get 2 or 3 of these services together bundled at a discount does make it a lot more appealing. And when you consider ESPN Plus only costs around $5 a month, I think Hulu costs like $8 to $12 for the non-commercial content, and then Disney Plus was speculated to cost less than Netflix, so that could be about $10 or so. You could potentially be getting all 3 for around $30 or less a month. That's a pretty good deal for an enormous amount of content. All your kids shows, like if you have a family, all your kids stuff from Disney, if you want Star Wars, Marvel, National Geographic, all your sports stuff from ESPN, all your TV shows and movies from the Fox acquisition, all that stuff on Hulu. That's a ton of content. So I could definitely see consumers, cutting the cable cord and switching to a platform like this, a bundle like this, maybe even canceling Netflix, maybe not signing up for AT&T's offering. And even if they want to keep those, they could just maybe they just want Star Wars or Marvel, they could just sign up for one or two of these services as well, maybe just sports. So there's a lot of different possibilities here, and I think it'll probably see pretty good results. But anyway, that's enough about their business. Let's now transition to their earnings. But just keep in mind that this quarter is being compared to a record quarter that they saw the year prior, especially in their studio segment where they released blockbuster hits like Coco, Thor Ragnarok, and Star Wars The Last Jedi. And keep in mind that many of these Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars movies bring in over $1 billion in revenue and hundreds of millions of dollars in profit, so that was a very difficult quarter to improve on. Not to mention that this is by all accounts a transitioning year for Disney as they invest more heavily in their direct-to-consumer business because of the whole cord-cutting movement that has really hurt some of their other cable TV businesses like ESPN, for example. Still, despite all of that, revenues came in about flat at around $15.3 billion, but net income did drop 37% year over year to around $2.8 billion. But if you adjust for one-time factors, their EPS only dropped by 3%, and even though these numbers do look bad on the surface, it was completely expected, as again, this is a transition year for Disney, so Wall Street's expectations were actually lower. See, Wall Street expected revenue of $15.18 billion, but Disney beat that with $15.3 billion, and they expected adjusted EPS of $1.55 per share, but Disney beat that by a considerable amount, reporting $1.84 per share. And breaking down their segments, we saw the weakness in their studio segment because of the blockbuster movies in the prior year quarter that we already talked about, dropping revenue by 27% year over year and operating income by 63% year over year. But the good thing is that all other segments did well except for direct to consumer, which again is because they're investing heavily into Disney Plus and their other streaming services. And even their media network segment that includes their cable TV offerings did surprisingly well, increasing revenue and operating income by 7% each. So don't get this confused with a bad quarter. They actually did pretty well despite competing with a monstrous studio quarter the year prior. And because their studio segment can fluctuate so much, it's never a good idea to study Disney on a per quarter basis, but instead on a yearly basis, which by the way, their fiscal year ended in the quarter before this one, and they saw revenues jump 8%, net income jumped 40%, and free cash flow jumped 13%. So this is by all means a very profitable company that is performing very well, growing at a nice rate, and is still investing in their future. Now, when looking at their balance sheet, it's not the greatest with a current ratio of just around 1-to-1. I usually like that to be a 2-to-1 or even a 3-to-1 if I can get it, but their total assets is pretty massive at about $100 billion, while their total liabilities is only around $45 billion, so I'm not too concerned. However, the acquisition of Fox is still around like $71 billion, with half of that being cash and the other half being stock, so we will undoubtedly see their debt climb significantly in the short term, but the added assets, cost savings, and increase in both the top and bottom line over the long term, I think will be worth the hit. And their margins are already pretty good with a profit margin of 21% and an operating margin of about 25%, and even their valuation doesn't look too bad either with a PE ratio of just 13. For comparison's sake, Netflix has a profit margin of less than 8% and a trailing PE of 128. That's pretty insane when you consider how much more diverse Disney's business is, yet they both have very similar market caps of around $150 billion and $165 billion respectively. And another pro to Disney is that they are also a pretty decent dividend growth stock with a yield of only about 1.6%, but an excellent payout ratio of less than 25%, a 5-year growth rate in the double digits at almost 15%, and almost a decade of consistent growth. And despite their stock being up over 300% in the past decade, they're only up less than 50% in the past 5 years and less than 6% in the past 1 year. So Wall Street hasn't really shown a lot of love for Disney, despite being one of the most adored companies out there with some of the strongest household brands that are never likely to disappear. So in conclusion, Disney remains one of those very stable and reliable stocks for me, and that's why it's my number one largest stock, especially because, it also pays a dividend, and it's really a stock that I can just hold for really as long as I want. I mean, I can hold it for decades if I really wanted to, because they have just such strong brands and such a strong business. Having said that, I've done most of my buying at under $100 per share, very similar to Microsoft actually. And Disney is one of those stocks that will kind of hover around a certain range of support and resistance, and it'll kind of hover around that range for a while before it eventually breaks out. So, I'm not really in any hurry to keep adding to my position at the moment, but if it dips back down to under 100, then I'd probably be buying more aggressively again. And I don't really think that that price would be too hard to get when you consider how volatile the market has been. And also when you consider that their next upcoming quarter is going to be compared to another record quarter the year prior where they released Black Panther, and that that movie saw like amazing sales too. So that's going to be another difficult quarter to be compared to. And keep in mind that they're still investing heavily. This is a transition year for them, and they still haven't even released their Disney Plus platform, which would be at the end of this year. But that'll be coming at the end of the year, and then in December, I think we get another Star Wars movie. So there are some things to look forward to later down the line. Having said that, April 11th is going to be a very important date to keep in mind because that's going to be their next Investors Day, and they've already stated that they'll be talking about Disney Plus on that day, and they're going to talk more about what's going to be on it, and they're going to even show it off as well. So if you guys want to see an update at that time, make sure you let me know in the comment section. Also, let me know what you think about Disney. Are you investing in Disney? Is it a stock that you're not interested in? I'd love to hear all your thoughts about it, and make sure you hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Thank you for all the support. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.